Hello, friends, and welcome to The Departure, a program about the imminent return of Jesus Christ for His people. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy these teachings of Bible prophecy and how current events speak of the soon departure of God's people. And now, here is our host, Evangelist Al Gist.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another program of The Departure. My name is Al Gist, and I greet you in the blessed name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for joining with us today. As I'm sure that most everyone by now knows, there is war in Israel. The first war declared by Israel for the last 50 years. The last one actually was in 1973 in the Yom Kippur War of 73. But they have declared war, and we're going to do today a very special program concerning what's happening in Israel right now, and hopefully be able to shed some biblical light on what's happening over there today. And so I would like to say, first of all, that this is a pre-recorded program, and things are changing very, very quickly, of course, concerning this war in Israel. And so by the time that you are able to watch this program, the things that I'm talking about may be somewhat older news. I won't be able to give you the absolute latest at the time that you're viewing the program. So with all of that being said, let's get right into it. As I said a moment ago, I think probably everyone realizes that Israel has declared war on the Hamas terrorist organization. And let me begin, if I can, by giving a little background on the area called Gaza, where Hamas is located next to or in border with the nation of Israel. Gaza is just a very narrow strip of land, about 25 miles long and an average of about 7 miles wide. It's located next to the Mediterranean Sea. Its western side would be against the Mediterranean. The north and the east side borders with the nation of Israel. And of course, there's about a 7.5 mile border on the south side that borders with Egypt. It has one of the highest population densities in the world, with approximately 2.3 million people living on that 140 square miles of land. And so it has one major city. It has several cities, but the most major city is located at the north end of the strip, and it's called Gaza City. And that is, of course, where the bulk of the people lived. And because of the high density of population, the city itself is extremely crowded and filled with people, over 1 million people living in Gaza City. Let's talk about the history of it, if we can, for just a moment. You may remember that on May 14th, 1948, Israel declared to the whole world that she was a sovereign nation beginning at that point. And the very next day, May 15th, 1948, the young nation of Israel, just one day old actually, was attacked by 5 Arab nations that surrounded her. It was Egypt and Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. And after much bloodshed in this War of Independence for Israel, about 10 months later, in the early months of 1949, there was a general armistice agreements were called by the Arab side, and upon signing those, there was the stated fact that Israel had now established itself with sovereignty, with sovereign borders. Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria actually signed the armistice agreements. Iraq, which was also participated in the war, did not conclude with an agreement since it did not have a common border with Israel. They just basically refrained and moved their forces out. And so that was the beginning of the Gaza Strip, because after the 1948 war, Gaza, that little strip of land, was controlled by Egypt. And it remained that way until the Six-Day War that took place in 1967, when Israel then took control of Gaza from Egypt. And in the following years, of course, there was a lot of violence that took place between Israel and the mostly Palestinian population in Gaza. So eventually in September of 2005, under the direction of Israeli Prime Minister of that time was Ariel Sharon, Israel made a complete unilateral withdrawal. They pulled out entirely from Gaza at that time. And then just 1 year later, under their own free, so-called free, parliamentary elections, Gaza elected the Hamas organization to take control of its government, and there has not been another free parliamentary election in Gaza since that took place. Hamas has controlled Gaza in their entire government. Hamas was at that time, and still is to this day, officially named among the terrorist organizations by the United States and the European Union and Israel. So it is a terrorist organization that they elected to be their governmental representatives. And the Palestinians have attacked Israel with numerous terrorist attacks over the years, killing many innocent civilians, and all the while, of course, screaming to the international community about how they want and how they deserve to have a Palestinian state, their own nation. Well, the truth is they have a Palestinian state and have had it since 2005, when Israel withdrew from there. They have their own government, they have their own police, they have their own social organization. They are a Palestinian state. And so the Jews were, at that time, literally drug out of their homes when Israel made its withdrawal, and they were scattered all over the country of Israel. Many of those Jewish people did not want to leave their homes and their farms and their businesses where they had lived for decades, actually, many of them. And they resisted. They didn't want to leave, and the Israeli soldiers had to go in and physically manhandle them and drag them out of their homes and out of their businesses. And so they resisted, but they did not resist to the degree of taking up arms against their own country. And so the trauma and the heartache caused by these citizens, by their own government, was absolutely horrendous. In one swift move, Israel evacuated Gaza and completely turned it over to the Palestinian people who live there. The Jewish villages that were there in Gaza at that time had been productive, thriving little towns. Among other things, they were known actually for some of the most beautiful cherry tomato crops that have ever been grown and exported. And so they had a good farm industry going there with the Jewish people. They turned all of this over to the Palestinians. And you would think that that those Palestinians would step in where the Jews had been, and they would take over those farms and continue to grow the crops that were grown there, and to become more firmly established with another agricultural industry there. But did they do that? No, they did not. But more like a mob, that went through the entire countryside. They totally destroyed everything that was considered to be Jewish. They bulldozed those beautiful farms and greenhouses. They utterly destroyed every Jewish synagogue. The Jews even had to exhume the bodies and the bones of their dead family members and take those remains with them when they left, because they knew that the Palestinians would do all sorts of horrible things to desecrate the graves of their loved ones. And so this whole ordeal, folks, was quite traumatic. Today, I guess for the most part, it has faded into the pages of history. For the most part, that withdrawal has been totally forgotten. But if any cultural group of people has ever had a ready-made opportunity to become established and to become productive, this gift was handed to the Palestinians on a platter, so to speak. They were living in their own independent homeland. And for truth, it can be said that they had an opportunity. They had a wide open chance here to become established and to do all the things that they needed to do to become a productive, prosperous, and happy people. Excuse me. I guess this was kind of an experimental attempt at allowing the Jews of Israel and the Muslim Palestinians to live side by side in peace and prosperity. And so it was a first time objective to have that kind of a situation. And what did they do? Well, almost immediately they put a bloodthirsty radical terrorist organization in control of their new homeland. And so they voted in the Hamas terrorist group to lead their government. And since that day, I would say that Gaza has become a cesspool of hatefulness, blaming all of their problems, of course, on Israel. And literally tens of thousands of rockets and mortar bombs have been launched into Israel from Hamas in Gaza since the transition took place back in 2005. Over and over again, in those years since 2005, Israel has had to go in with a military force and attack Gaza with some major incursions in order to protect itself from the terrorist activities that were thrown at them by Hamas. I remember some of the names. There was Operation Returning Echo in 2012, Operation Pillar Defense also in 2012, Operation Protective Edge in 2014, Operation Wall Guardian in 2021, and Operation Breaking Dawn in 2022, and many others. That's just a few of them. But you can't deal with these people. They are so radically brainwashed into hating every Jew they're obsessed with that idea, and they want nothing more than to kill and maim and do away with all Jewish people. I remember reading that in 1967, the Arab League Summit was held in Khartoum, and this was the Arab League Summit, and this was right after their defeat in the 1967 Six-Day War, and they voted in this resolution in Khartoum a certain thing that became known as the three no's. They said concerning Israel, there would be no peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. And that's what they voted in Khartoum, Sudan, right after the Six-Day War. And that has been the mentality certainly with Hamas and some other Islamic radical groups. And so now, once again, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad have attacked Israel from Gaza. But this time their attack was very, very deadly. I'm not going to go into all the gruesome details, but at around 6:30 a.m. on October the 7th, which was a Saturday morning, the Hamas terrorist group made an unprecedented surprise attack on a number of Israeli towns that were situated near the Israel-Gaza border. And as of right now, as we're programming this, the number of Israeli civilians, men, women, and children that were mercilessly slaughtered by the terrorists, the number stands at around 1,400, and it continues to climb. So I'm not sure what it will be by the time you hear this program. But I can say this, it is the worst single death toll of the Jewish people since the Holocaust of World War II. And most certainly the worst in all of the wars and terrorist attacks that have been levied against the state of Israel in this 75 years that they've been in existence. In addition to the people who were killed, some 200 people were also taken as hostages and carried away to Gaza. Some of them were very elderly people. There were even small children that were taken hostage, and of course many young adults, men and women. If you took the deaths of the Israelis, we'll say round numbers about 1,400, as a percentage of the whole population of Israel, which stands now at 9,795,000, and that was as of September of this year, and you multiply that percentage times the population of the United States, which is about 340 million people, you come up with a total of about 48,674 people. What I've done with that little mathematical calculation is to take the death toll in the small nation of Israel and make it proportionately in America to see how many people in America would have to be killed to be percentage-wise the same as what was killed in Israel. And so taking that percentage, what we've come to here is that 48,674 people would have to be killed in America to be proportionate to the people, the population of the people in Israel, with the 1,400 that were killed there. The latest number that I was able to find on the death toll on Americans in the 9/11 attack was that there were 2,977 Americans that were killed. So again, this is proportionately 16 times the American loss of what Israel has suffered. That is, Israel's deaths are to them like our 9/11 was to us times 16. Can you imagine 16 9/11s taking place in America all at one time? That's basically what Israel has endured. Well, almost immediately after the attack, the Israeli military began a sustained bombing campaign on Gaza City, dropping over 6,000 bombs on the city in just the first 6 days. And all the while, the Hamas terrorist group continued to fire rockets into Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces reported after the first, I think, 6 days, that there were some 3,500 rockets fired out of Gaza into Israel. And the bloodshed certainly has not stopped, as Israel is now gathering its forces, its military forces on the border of Israel. They brought in around 400,000 soldiers and a massive amounts of military equipment and weapons on the border with Gaza in preparation for a ground invasion into Gaza with the objective of wiping Hamas off the face of the earth, as it was said by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is the first declared war in Israel in the last 50 years. The last one, as I said, was in 1973, which was the Yom Kippur War. But since then, it's been 50 years since Israel has had to declare war on anybody. And what's taking place and what is about to happen there, no doubt, is going to bring a much greater death toll before this is brought to any kind of a conclusion. The Israeli military is going to be moving basically from house to house, building to building, hunting down and taking out those Hamas terrorists. And that's going to be a very slow process. I don't know how long it will take. Typically, these earlier military operations that were conducted were, over normally within 2 or 3 weeks. But I think this war is going to last somewhat longer. It'll certainly take longer to do the house-to-house fighting like they're going to have to do. And so I don't know how long it's going to take. I would hate to even make a guess, but maybe a few months at least, I would think. At the same time, another more weaponized and deadly terrorist group sits in Lebanon along the border with Israel, and that is called Hezbollah. And Hezbollah, they say, the media is reporting right now, has about 100,000 rockets pointing at Israel. They are already making some minor attacks against Israel. I think of it as kind of like a monkey poking a lion with a stick. They're getting ready to start a terrible war that's going to devastate them. But both Hamas and Hezbollah are supplied and directed by the governments of Syria and primarily Iran. The Iranians have been the ones who have been spouting off these terrible threats against Israel and the United States, indicating that they are going to unleash a multi-front assault on Israel with the intent to completely destroy the whole country if Israel makes a ground invasion into Gaza, which Israel has declared that they are definitely going to do. I believe that what has happened in Gaza and Israel is going to prove to be fatal for Hamas. Israel has been for several months now. They've been having some severe political division in the country concerning the powers of their Supreme Court. And I won't go into that whole thing, but I remember that last March when we were in Israel, we saw protests in the streets of people, I guess, protesting or the two sides of that issue. And I've even read that the division is so deep that it could create a civil war in Israel. Of course, that hasn't happened. But what has happened is with this attack by Hamas, it has completely 100% unified the people of Israel. They are all in 100% agreement that enough is enough. They've put up with this stuff too long from Hamas, and they want a 100% annihilation of Hamas. And so I'm sure that the terrorists did not plan to accomplish that, but Israel is completely unified. And at this time, I have to say, thankfully, that they have got the backing and support of the United States. We've heard a lot of rhetoric about how we will stand with Israel, but time will tell whether that proves to be true or not, and just to what extent our government will stand with Israel. The Abraham Accords, you will remember, have brought in some treaties between Israel and some of the Arab friends that they have, the Arab nations. The United Arab Emirates was one, and Bahrain. Both of those signed the Abraham Accords in 2020. Israel has also since then made normalization treaties with Sudan and Morocco, and they were moving towards having such a treaty with Saudi Arabia. This is the purpose behind Iran pushing Hamas to make this attack on Israel. It was to side rail, to destroy the efforts of having Israel make further agreements with Arab nations. And so there's no doubt but what Iran is at the rear guard of this, promoting the thing, pushing it, and directing Hamas to do what they have now done. Here in the United States, as I said, we've sworn to uphold Israel and supply them with billions of dollars worth of weapons and bombs and other ammunitions. The USS Carrier Group, Gerald Ford, along with all of their support ships that run with it, have already been stationed off the coast of Israel in the Mediterranean. Another fleet of Navy ships led by the USS Carrier Dwight D. Eisenhower has also been deployed and is presently on their way to join the Gerald Ford Group. These two naval fleets, folks, alone represent a massive, massive naval weapons buildup in the area. And so what's going to transpire in the coming months and the coming days? Well, a ground invasion, but beyond that, only God knows. Maybe the Iranians will force Hezbollah into getting into the fight. I don't know. I wouldn't dare say. God knows the future. I don't know the future. But I believe that it's a strong possibility that there will be other groups that will now try to attack Israel when they invade into Gaza. So that's a little background. I really wanted to get into more of the biblical connection, you might say, but we've run out of time. And so I thank you for joining with us. And in our next program, we'll continue this discussion.